Okay, we are in Proverbs 17 today. Rolling right along, Proverbs 17. Wednesday morning Bible study never went so fast as when we got to the second half of Proverbs, did it? And now one chapter a week. We have, I think, let's count them up here, 28 verses in Proverbs 17. So we'll do the same thing that we've done before. And Richard, good to see you this morning. We will go around and read one verse at a time. And I will start with verse 1. And let's see which route are we going to take today. We're going to go this way. I promised this side. They keep getting the snub on some of this. So we're going to go this way today. So we'll go from me to Steve to Deborah to Bill. And then we'll do Dennis and Karen. And then Teresa and Jeff. And then John, who's out of position because he has to go to a budget meeting. We all envy him deeply for that. And then we'll go to Norm and Nancy and Bob and Sherry and Todd and Sherry and Steve. And then we'll go to Art and then to Richard and then to Sheila and then back to Liz and then Heather will end it. We're just going to go a different route today. Get on your toes. Remember, awkward silence means it's more than likely your turn. And look alive because there's a few slight translation differences and they might read a verse that looks different than your verse and you got to start with confidence anyway. So let's make sure we're all on. We are. Ready, set, go. Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with strife.
A wise servant will rule over a disgraceful son and will share the inheritance as one of the brothers.
The crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, the Lord tests the heart.
A wicked man listens to evil lips. A liar pays attention to a malicious tongue.
Whoever mocks the poor shows contempt for their maker. Whoever gloats over disaster will not go unpunished.
Children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children.
Arrogant lips are unsuited to a fool. How much worse lying lips to a ruler.
A gift is as a precious stone in the eyes of him that hath it. Whithersoever it turneth, it prospers.
He who covers over an offense provokes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends.
And the rebuke impresses a discerning person more than 100 lashings of fool.
Evildoers false rebellion against God, and they compare the death of his sin against them.
Let a bear rob of her wealth, leave a man, rather than a fool in his fall.
If you repay good with evil, evil will never leave your house.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Okay, here we go. Right. The beginning of strife is like letting out water to stop before the quarrel breaks out.
He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous, both of them alike are an abomination to the Lord.
It is senseless to pay to educate a fool, since he has no heart for learning.
A friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity.
A man void of understanding striketh hands and becometh surety in the presence of his friend.
Whosoever loves a quarrel loves sin. Whoever builds a high gate invites destruction.
The crooked heart will not prosper. The lying tongue tumbles into trouble.
To have a fool for a son brings grief. There is no joy for the father of a fool.
A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones.
The wicked man accepts a bribe in secret to pervert the course of justice.
A discerning man keeps wisdom in view, but a fool's eyes wander to the ends of the earth.
A foolish son brings grief to his father and bitterness to the one who bore him.
Imposing a fine when innocent is not good. Surely to flog honest officials is not right.
The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered.
Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue.
There you go. Even a silent fool seems wise, right? There we go. All right, everybody, so you've read it. Things that stand out to you, themes that rise to the top. Anything particularly that catches your attention you want to talk about? We can go a lot of directions here today. What direction do you want to go first? From Proverbs 17. Anything that was challenging to you or stuck out, or questions, or any complaints about Proverbs 17?
I've seen family reunions that resemble verse 1.
Family reunions that resemble verse 1, yes. Yeah, I believe the expression in verse 1 is literally sacrifices of strife. So you're supposed to have sacrifices or offerings of peace. That's one of the kinds of offerings prescribed by the law of Moses. And so sacrifices of strife means they may be peace offerings, which you're going to take a portion of the peace offering and go and eat it at home, or the fellowship offering, eat it at home as a family. And they're saying it doesn't do much good if there's a lot of strife there. So this goes back to our vegetable text from a few weeks ago, right? Better to have only vegetables but love than to have the finest of meats and strife or hatred in your household. And this is right along the lines with us. So what is valuable, what is not valuable? Peace in the household is worth a lot more. Better to have, anybody else like the dry crust? Some of you I know cut the crust off of the bread so you can just have the soft part, but better to have dry crust with peace than to have sacrifices of strife. Other themes or things that come up, things we've seen before, things that are brand new. Verse 5 says a lot. We'll do Jeff and then we'll do Steve. What do you say for verse 5? He who mocks the poor shows contempt for their maker. Whoever gloats over disaster will not go unpunished. This is one of those important nuggets that's in Proverbs, because there are several texts in Proverbs about laziness or folly leading to poverty. And certainly laziness and folly will lead you to poverty, but that is not to say that everybody who is impoverished has been lazy or foolish. And we came across a verse or two earlier that talked about how people have oppressed people into poverty. And that was the text from Sunday's sermon, Psalm 103, the Lord works righteousness and justice for all the oppressed. And so the Lord's heart is for those who have wrongly been taken advantage of and pressed down, put down. And so here we have, be careful how you talk about the poor. Whoever mocks the poor shows contempt for their maker, in whose image they're created, we believe, biblically. And so to insult the poor is, in fact, to insult God himself, and that's probably not what you really want to do. So it calls us to a humility about dealing with poverty, I think. Yes, Liz? Yes, Jesus says, whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me. And that's a very similar line of thinking as this one right here.
And the word in the second half of that says, he that is glad at calamities.
Yeah. Yeah, he that is glad at calamities will not be unpunished. Yeah. I mean, we've got a little bit of forgiveness theme going through Proverbs 17. We'll unpack here in a minute. But don't be too excited over somebody else's disaster. This is Jonah, right? Like Jonah really wants, I want it to come to him, and then it doesn't come. And he's bummed that they didn't get the disaster that he wanted. So be careful when you gloat about someone else's disaster, and be careful when you revel in someone else's poverty, because the Lord really doesn't take pleasure in the disaster, and he's
Doesn't it feel good when you see something happen? You had it.
Well, doesn't it feel good when you see something happen? All right, to Todd's point here, Todd says, doesn't it feel good when you see something happen and you say they had it coming? So verse 15, acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent, the Lord detests them both. So the Lord, in fact, is honored when injustice is labeled as injustice and punished in that way, and when innocence is vindicated in that way, to be sure. I think the challenge gets back to your very honest assessment there, which I'm sure none of us have ever felt like, Todd, right? Right. But there is a little bit of a we're glad that they got what was coming to them. And
Like when you're on the interstate, let's
right,
say.
right,
And you're whatever, you go 5 minutes down the road, there's
right.
a trooper.
You're in the interstate, Right, you're on the interstate and someone flies by you and is, darting in and out and causing problems, and you see that the state trooper has paid them a visit, and that does not make you sad that that happens. But there's maybe more to the point. So we were on the highway in suburban St. Louis some years ago, rainy day, and we're like in the middle lane of 3 or 4 or 5, whatever there are, and this car goes up the inside lane, up against the fast lane, up against the concrete barrier, and it's flying. I mean, like Indy 500, and it is rainy and it is slick and it's not good. And they spin out. We watched this happen. It was like being in a NASCAR race. They spin out and they slide all the way across the lanes and go up against the side. Now, I think everyone lived through that accident, but you have the emotions all in the moment there, where the guy flies by and you're thinking, man, I hope that the police get him or her. And then you're like, but my goodness, I hope they're okay. So I'm not going to revel. I mean, they were driving like idiots. There's no way around that, right? And so in a sense, they deserved that. But then, you see what I'm saying? There's all the mixed emotions come out in a short span of time there. And you don't want them to drive like that, but you don't want them to be seriously hurt. It's just kind of a drama.
About the most charitable thing you can say as well, I hope they learn from it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because each of us, right, has done something behind the wheel, like, oh, that was bad. And even if there wasn't an immediate consequence, like, I need to be careful to not do that again. Nancy's laughing at Norm right now, so something must be a story.
What just happened this morning?
Yeah, you just yeah, and your spouse says, I hope you learn from it.
Yeah.
Nancy said it just happened this morning. But we all, so I think that gets to the humility of it, right? Because I might have a legitimate measure of satisfaction when justice appears to be served. And yet we also have this sense from Psalm 130, other places, like, if the Lord gave us all we deserved all the time, we'd all be in trouble. So there's this humility about this, and the two things go together. So not reveling. This is what you want to get. You want to get to the point where you're sad for those that have wronged you. Like I find myself initially angry. We read these persecution things, the Voice of the Martyrs, and you read about what is done to some of our brothers and sisters in these places, and it makes you so angry. And then you read them talking about their enemies, like, yes, but we're sad for them because they're headed for destruction and their lives are a mess, and we have compassion on them. And these are the people who were persecuted, speaking about the persecutors. And I was just ticked off and really hoping, kind of want to punch them in the face, right? And that's not, so there is a place, the Lord doesn't take pleasure in the destruction of anyone, says Ezekiel. And so getting to that place of compassion toward those that have wronged us. So the Lord, verse 15, wants just verdicts to be arbitrated in courtrooms and things. He wants justice to be done. But he also does not want us to have, like Jeff said, the back half of that verse, to have kind of a maculatory, celebratory attitude about their poverty, their misery, their calamity, whatever. That's not a good way to live your life. But there's definitely room for improvement in my heart, and maybe in yours as far as that goes, because we want a little bit of goodness coming. Liz, did you have a comment a moment ago, or do you have a... No. Okay.
Well,
Yes, Art.
along that matter, what pops into my head, and I'm looking here, Ecclesiastes 4, is Solomon says, in effect, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore it's in the hearts of the sons of men to do evil continually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is that retribution.
Sure.
That's, I guess, the differences between government and individuals.
Well, a little bit. So you're talking about how there is a legitimate concern. In fact, even here in verse 15, for right judgments being meted out by those that are in authority, and punishments happening upon the wicked and that sort of thing. And there is a need for that in society. And what is a concern here, whispered throughout Proverbs 17, is the concern about bribes. Verse 8, a bribe is the charm of the one who gives it. The person who's in the process of giving the bribe or receiving the bribe thinks they've got a great deal, but the bribe is not good, verse 23, in the eyes of God. A wicked man accepts a bribe in secret to pervert the course of justice. So we have this theme about justice throughout Proverbs 17, and the concern of our author at this point that we wouldn't have corruption of justice because of bribes. that would make right judgments. So when Jesus comes along in Isaiah 11, Isaiah 61, what is emphasized about him is that he will make right judgments, and he will not go by what he sees, but by what is right and true, and that those right judgments will in fact bring peace. I mean, this is the vision of the world to come. No more death, crying, mourning, or pain, because Satan and his affiliates get the lake of death, lake of fire, the second death. There is no more rebellion. If there is no more rebellion, if there is no more wickedness, then you can have peace. So sooner or later, wrong has to be dealt with and righted, either repented from, punished, that sort of thing. And the concern in Proverbs 17 is for rulers, judges who might accept bribes and pervert justice, and we want that to be done rightly. At the same time in Proverbs 17, we have a concern for mercy. So Jeff mentioned verse, 5 there, right? Verse 5, you don't want to gloat over someone else's disaster or mock someone else's poverty. And then, let's see, forgiveness is on down here as well. Where is it? It's behind me. Verse 9, 15, 17, where are we? Yeah, verse 9, he who covers over and repents promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. Verse 19 possibly as well could be a forgiveness text. He who loves a quarrel loves sin. He who builds a high gate invites destruction. We're just not going to start these quarrels. We're not going to jump into things. We're going to be a forgiving people and not be hateful or not be reveling in someone else's destruction. So there's the desire for forgiveness or mercy is here in Proverbs 17, and then also the meeting out of right judgments is here in Proverbs 17, and they're held together. So, yes.
I'm just thinking, like, so much of this has to do with the heart.
Yeah.
We want to have hearts that recognize justice and are grateful and glad when justice is done.
Yeah.
We also want to have hearts of mercy that really see the people involved
Right.
and want their good, want
Right.
their best. And just how hard that is for us, like we so often will go one extreme or the other. And it just makes me, once again, I'm so grateful for God.
Yes.
That he is able to
Right.
like his
Right.
character is the perfect mix of that mercy and justice. And
Yeah.
like it's so hard for us, but it's beautiful in him.
Yeah. So Liz is saying we want to have hearts of justice and also hearts of mercy. Like we celebrate when justice is done, but we also celebrate and we are a people of mercy. To think of God, we would say God is a God of justice, would we not? We'd also say God is a God of mercy. And we'd say both those things are good. It's a good thing that Judgment Day is coming. It's also a good thing that God offers us mercy through the cross. And so we want to be a merciful people. And so there is this tension there, But I think you can see to it that justice is done without being spiteful or bitter or vengeful. And we have a number of people that are in positions of authority, judges, prosecutors, police officers, on down the line, who are indeed in charge of trying to administer justice, and we want them to do their jobs well. And it bothers us, especially when someone who, because they're wealthy or famous or prominent or whatever, gets away with murder, literally or figuratively, and someone else who just couldn't afford a good lawyer gets thrown in jail. Like, that's what verse 15 is about. The Lord does not take pleasure when someone is dismissed because of prejudice or their own poverty or whatever, and they couldn't afford it, and they're wrongly accused and condemned, and someone else gets off easy because they paid the right person the right amount of money. That's what the concern is in Proverbs 17. We want justice to be done rightly. At the same time, though, we don't want to be gloating over someone else's calamity or poverty or whatever, and we want to be a forgiving people. He who covers over an offense promotes love, verse 9. Whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. The value in letting it go, in forgiving and moving forward is also upheld here. So both those things go together.
It's not good for us if we go around
Right.
carrying all this anger and people, that's our own hearts are gonna, it's not good for us.
If we go around harboring vindictiveness toward other people, it is not good for our hearts and therefore not good for the other people around us. So can we be people who pray for and advocate for justice with, of course, the understanding that ultimate justice only finally comes on Resurrection Day when Jesus sorts out things out. But can we be people who work for and advocate for actual justice while at the same time having compassion and mercy. I mean, think about the people who we see on TV or the internet or whatever who instantly make us angry, right? Because of whatever they're involved in. They advocate for something that you and I don't believe in. They were involved in some activity that was just a travesty, an injustice. It was brutality, it was whatever. And naturally we find ourselves, there's like some righteous anger, but then there's some not so righteous, like vindictive, bitter spirit toward that person. And praying that the Lord would bring us from a place of that bitterness to a place of mercy. Like, okay, what they did was wrong, or what they're doing I disagree with, or what they do makes me angry. But that's a person created in the image of God, a person for whom Christ died. And I want to be Jesus says, love your enemies, do good to them, which I think has a lot of ramifications for all this. So how do we work that out? How do you have hearts of mercy and advocate for justice at the same time? And very often advocating for justice is advocating for mercy, because someone was hurt at the hands of someone else, and so we want the right thing to be done. Verse 15, the Lord does not like it when bribes wreck justice. He wants right to be done.
Can you pray for justice to come more quickly?
Can you pray for justice to come more quickly? Yes, you can. I think especially, there have been especially situations that when I'm aware of something, especially globally, where someone is taking advantage of a whole group of people and causing all kinds of suffering, and they themselves are living rich and luxurious lives. And I'll pray the Lord will either bring them to the grave or bring them to their knees, one of the two. But this needs to stop, And I think that kind of praying is fair.
North Korea is an excellent example of that.
I'm sorry, what?
North Korea is an
Yeah, North Korea is a great example of that. There's a man who's getting away with horrible stuff, and no one in North Korea, other than the people that are in charge, are doing well. And so to pray the Lord would bring that man down, or bring him to his knees, one way or the other, and bring transformation there. And then how long, O Lord, how long, O Lord? And the Lord's patience means salvation, and that's where that really makes it difficult, right? Why am I praying what I'm praying? It's a great question to ask of anything. But why am I praying what I'm praying? Because if the Lord doesn't take pleasure in anyone's destruction, as Ezekiel says, but he wants the wicked to repent and live, as Isaiah says, then we see the wicked getting away with evil, and we naturally want that evil to come to an end, and yet the heart of Jesus would still appear to be for that person's forgiveness, because, as Peter says, the Lord's patience means salvation. And so there's a tension there, isn't there? Like, I want the wrong to end, and I want justice to be done, but Lord, forgive me if my heart too quickly wants that person's condemnation rather than their transformation. And this is why I'm really challenged by our persecuted friends who are saying, yeah, we're praying for our persecutors. I'm like, you're praying for them. I'm angry at them. My sanctification is not as far along as yours is, but that's part of the journey too. So, yeah, this is good stuff to wrestle through for sure. And it's easy to talk about with the leader of North Korea, whatever he calls himself. It becomes a lot more difficult when it's a real live human being in Greene County, Indiana. And now we really have to deal with my sense of justice and my sense of mercy, or the lack thereof. Yeah, for sure. Yep. Good conversation. What else we want?
Close family members.
Close family members. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, now we're back to verse 1. As Bill said, he's been to some family reunions that resemble verse 1. Better to have dry crust than all the feasting and the strife that goes with it. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's fair. That's fair. What else do we want to talk about here? Anything that stuck out to you? I could go different directions here. Oh, yeah, Steve, a moment ago. Yeah, we.
Verse 3 there talks about testing the heart. That shows up a lot here, just in 17, but in a lot of other.
Yes.
Throughout the whole document.
Yes. So Steve is saying Proverbs 17:3, the crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, and the Lord tests the heart. It's a little bit uncertain whether this is a contrast or not, but we get the theme of it here. This is 1 Peter 1. Let's go to 1 Peter 1 real quick. 1 Peter 1, verses, let's start in verse 3 through verse 7. How about that? 1 Peter 1, verses 3 through 7. Who would like to read that this morning? All right, Todd's got it. Thank you.
Blessed be the God and Father of your Lord Jesus Christ, By his great mercy, he has given us a new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven for you who are being protected by the power of God through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you rejoice, even if now for a little while you have had to suffer various trials, so that the genuineness of your faith, being more precious than gold, that though perishable, is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed.
Okay, thank you, Todd. So he's talked about this living hope that we have, an inheritance stored up in heaven, waiting to be unveiled in the last day. And because of this hope, we can have joy right now, even in the midst of various trials, which in an echo of Proverbs 17:3 says, these have come to refine our faith, which is like gold but better than gold. So like gold in that it needs to be refined, but better than gold in that it's of greater worth. There's another Proverbs idea. What is really worth something? The gold is worth something. The faith is worth something more. And so we want our faith to be refined like gold, but better than gold, resulting in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus is revealed. Similar theme in Hebrews 12, I think. Let's go to Hebrews 12. How about that? Hebrews 12 quotes Proverbs. Remember, we talked about Hebrews 12 has 2 or 3 references to Proverbs chapters 3 and 4. We've slept a few times since then, but I'm going to go ahead and read Hebrews 12 here, beginning in verse 4. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood, and you have forgotten that word of encouragement from Proverbs 3 that addresses you as sons. My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes everyone except the son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as sons. For what son is not disciplined by his father? I'm going to skip on down verse 11. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees. Make level paths for your feet. That's Proverbs 4. So that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. So all of this is to Steve's point that what we find in Proverbs 17:3 is actually all over the Bible, that as silver and gold are refined, so also we are refined. And the Lord gives us refinement, allows for us to experience refinement, some combination of those things, that we might be pure and valuable as silver and gold become through the refinement process. I have never enjoyed any crucible, but I can honestly say in the aftermath that my faith is better for the crucibles the Lord has put me through. And so I think that is, the Lord disciplines those he loves is an odd paradox. Like, we think love is you say nice things to me all the time. And love does involve saying nice things. But sometimes love says you're out of line and you need to be refined. Or love says, I'm going to let you walk through this. I think about the story of Lazarus and the perplexing combo of things that Jesus is aware of and could have prevented and then does not. And all the agony that the people and Jesus himself was weeping and stirred up and angry when Lazarus dies. And he allows for this situation that grieves his own heart in the lives of those that he loves for the sake of something which is yet to come, the glory which comes. And so the Lord's working with us in hard things is a real strange dynamic to sort through sometimes. But to learn to embrace it as an opportunity, like however this hardship has come on my radar, to embrace it as an opportunity for growth is a real hard thing, but good thing to come to and to embrace. Another reason maybe for that other verse there, not to mock someone who's in their hardship right now, because the hardship just might be their refinement, and I might have needed refinement too, and so maybe I shouldn't, lean too hard into this. Other comments or questions? Anything at all in Proverbs 17 that caught your attention? Yes, Liz.
Fun observation, verse 6, grandchildren, the crowning glory of the age. I think most grandparents would agree with that.
Grandchildren are the crowning glory of the age is your translation for verse 6. Children's children are crowned of the age, verse 6, and parents are the pride of their children. So we have this theme. I'm glad you brought that up, Liz. If you go back to Proverbs 10:1, we have this theme of honoring your father and your mother. that is, of course, a law of Moses, a Ten Commandments thing, but it's also here in Proverbs. Proverbs 10:1. Who wants to read Proverbs 10:1? Jeff has it.
Proverbs of Solomon, a wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother.
Okay, a wise son brings joy or gladness to his father. A foolish son brings grief or heaviness to his mother. And by extension, the opposite is true. A wise son makes mom happy, and a foolish son brings grief to dad as well. That theme already has been drawn out a few different times. Listen to my instruction, right? It's been valuable to me since my youth, says the voice of Proverbs. And so I want you to listen and learn from this too. And then you come back here to Proverbs 17. The children's children are crowned of the aged, and the parents the pride of their children. And then, where else in chapter 17? There are several little things about family in here. 21. Yes, 21, 25. Thank you. So, to have a fool for a son brings grief. There is no joy in the father of a fool. There is no joy in Mudville, right? And then verse 25, a foolish son brings grief to his father and bitterness to the one who bore him. The implication throughout Proverbs is the son or daughter or anybody who listens to the way of wisdom and gets serious about it is going to bring joy and blessing to their families for generations to come, as your verse said there, verse 6. And the one who wanders off in the way of folly is going to bring grief and strife and shame upon his or her household. And in an ancient world especially, where the honor or the shame that you bring upon your household is maybe the most important thing, more important than life or death, you want to embrace this wisdom and therefore honor your family, honor your father and mother in that way, your grandparents even, as opposed to wandering off in the wickedness and the folly and bringing strife and disgrace. Yeah. Other tracks we're going to go down today with Proverbs 17. This is good stuff.
Verse 14, my translation is, starting a quarrel is like opening a floodgate.
There you go.
How often is that not like you start and it just like goes and goes and goes and goes because it's so big.
Yes, yes.
And you're like, how does this even happen?
Verse 14, starting a quarrel is like flooding a dam, like opening the floodgates. So we all know that cleaning up after a dam breaks is a lot more work than the engineer doing the job right in the first place, right? You know, I mean, that's what we want. We have lots of engineers in here, right? So we want to build the dam well, want to keep the water in there. And if you don't pour that water in that's going to overflow that dam and cause that flood. Don't do that. There is no need to do that. And so starting a quarrel. Again, the issue of timing in speech, which we've seen in Proverbs. I'm not prepared to go back and look at all those references today. We've seen a lot of things in Proverbs about cool-headedness, about patience, about being silent rather than speaking foolishly. You know, there's a lot of that. And so here's the idea. I have the opportunity to start a quarrel or not start a quarrel. Don't start it. Just stuff it. You don't need to bring that up. It's not going to help anything right now, you know. There's a time for confrontation. There's a time for not. I think about, is it Paul to Timothy? Stay away from the foolish controversies and quarrels and things. And so don't start the quarrel. You don't need to start. It'll be like a dam breaking, and now we've got a mess. Like, don't do that. Yes, Bill.
But from the civil engineering standpoint,
There we go. I was hoping we'd get to that.
with certain rainfall days, it's better to release water from the dam and cause limited damage to certain areas than it is for the water to top the dam and
Sure,
flush the dam
sure.
entirely,
Right.
and then create even greater damage.
Right. So the civil engineering standpoint, Bill is saying there are ways to release the water intentionally, deliberately, and maybe cause a small problem rather than letting the dam fail and have smaller problems rather than causing a bigger problem. And now we're back to Ephesians 4, which is really a quote of Proverbs as well, I think, which is don't let the sun go down on your wrath. In your anger, do not sin. There's a sense in which we want to deal with stuff now rather than have a dam-breaking quarrel later on. And certainly that's a valid
I was
thing.
watching one of these shows, In the Eye of the Storm. It's on TV now. And they were talking about one of these gigantic flood situations in Texas where and filled this dam up. Well, they ended up having to release the water from the dam, and it flooded a large area in this major metropolitan area. Because they released the water, there was always a lot, but they said it would have been much worse
Yeah.
if they had waited on this dam and let it
Yeah, yeah,
destroy the dam
Yeah.
and flood even more. So,
yeah,
you've got a situation where sometimes you have to release some things
yeah.
and have some damage, but recognize that you're not going to have as great a damage if you let it totally.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's something in that whole conversation. We're just thinking about our words and the collateral damage that they will cause or not cause. Think about the wisdom of saying, I've told you before, Dr. Gerritsen was the president at Taylor when I was there, and he always talked about doing the right thing at the right time in the right way for the right reasons. And thinking about that sense of discernment. Why am I saying something here? For whom am I saying something here? Is this the right time? It might well be it's my word to say, but this might not be the time to say it. And there's discernment in those kinds of things. And so thinking about that, and I think about verse 14, the eagerness to start a quarrel, the eagerness to be vindicated as right. I've got an opinion here and I'm right and I need to say it right now. And then, but I didn't think about breaking the dam and flooding the valley and causing this problem. So to think about, to have the wisdom to take a deep breath and think about the ramifications of what I'm about to say and what that's going to do. And I think that's the calling of verse 14, yeah.
I think about like the example Bill was giving, like in marriage, like
Yeah.
there's times where you may have to have a hard conversation
Right.
with your spouse or something that's been hurtful or something
Right.
that's been hard or whatever.
Right.
But if you have that conversation now, it won't just build up, and then explode
Right.
someday over the small
Right,
thing.
right. So what Bill is talking about, the deliberate flood release to flood a little bit rather than have the disastrous break the dam, is wisdom for marriage, because you do want to talk. I mean, the best way to destroy your marriage is not deal with your stuff. You just let it build and build and build and build and build and pop, and now we've really got a problem. So to actually say, hey, we're going to have a willingness here to have kind of a crucible situation here, a difficult conversation. We're going to work through this hard thing, and because we work through it in an intentional way, and hopefully with some wise vocabulary and some non-blaming and non-name calling and some active listening and all that stuff, we want to have these healthy conversations now to avoid the blow up and the disastrous thing later. It's like anything else. You got to deal with that leak before the pipe bursts and we got a big problem. You want to deal with whatever that issue is before it takes over the world. And I think that's in here as well. So thinking about what kind of flood may or may not happen, because of my word.
Counseling's all about?
That's exactly what, yeah. I've just described to you what I do when I do premarital. I can't call it counseling anymore legally because I'm not a counselor. I can talk conversations. But when we talk about premarital conversations, we talk about dealing with the stuff when it comes up. We talk about non-blaming. So when this happens, I feel like, not you always, you never, and not name calling, but to be honestly, so when this happens, I feel like, or it seems to me when this happens that this, and to be able to talk about stuff more objectively about that. We also talk about doing that at the right time too. So if we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, it's probably not the best time to do it. We're going to talk about this tomorrow, and we're going to make it a point to talk about it. We're not going to put it off further, but we can't talk about it right now. Like that kind of thing. There's some wisdom in when and how and that sort of thing. But conflict is not bad, but conflict can be done badly. And I think there's an important difference there. And a good relationship, we've developed ways to deal with conflict in healthy ways. Yeah. Yes, Sandy.
27 kind of sums the whole conversation up.
Verse 27 sums the whole conversation up. A man of knowledge uses words with restraint, and a man of understanding is even-tempered. Exactly. The wisdom, the discernment, the knowledge, the understanding is going to have some regulation on my mouth. And the folly is going to, hey, I've got a point to make and I need to make it now, right? And not necessarily the best thing. Right, and then verse 28 along with that, right? Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent. Even a fool can be wise if they just choose to keep silent for a moment, That's a good thing. We got 10 minutes. What else you want to dig into here from any themes we haven't addressed in Proverbs 17? Verse 16. Of what use is money in the hand of the fool, since he has no heart, literally, to get wisdom? Yeah. Again, about comparative wealth in Proverbs. His money doesn't no good if his heart isn't open to wisdom. And that's, again, what is worth the most? Where is prosperity? Where is value? It's in wisdom. You have all the money in the world, but if your heart isn't open to wisdom, you're in a tough way. There you go, yeah. Yeah, so your translation interprets it a little bit differently. It's senseless to pay for the education of a fool since his heart is not open to learning. Similar concept there. The money will not be well spent on the fool.
Like sending some kids to college.
Like
Then you can go from there to
Yeah.
25. I think the foolish children grieve to their father, bitterness to the
Right,
mother, the
right.
fool.
Right. Foolish son brings grief to his father, bitterness to the one who bore him. And there's that mother-father honoring thing again we saw back in chapter 10. You don't want your life to have been a waste. You don't want your life to have been dishonoring to all the people who poured into you and taught you and loved you. And if you're open to wisdom, it won't be a disgrace, a waste, or whatever. If you are bent on the folly and the wickedness, it will be a waste of money and a shame on all those who poured into you. Yeah. A little bit related to the forgiving theme, like we saw the forgiveness theme in verse 9, better to cover over an offense than to keep it going. Like just forgive it and let it go. But then back down in verse 17, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Who is with you when things are hard? Who has stuck with you? Who has been genuinely supportive of you in some of your most difficult times? That's what we're calling to. So we're not only calling people to be good brothers and sisters, to be good friends, but we're also thinking, I think, with some gratitude about those who have been there. A friend loves not in the best times only. Of course, those are easy, but in all times. Even implied, given the context, when wrongs have been done and forgiveness is needed. Yes, Sandy.
That's a verse I remember from childhood that I had totally backwards.
Yeah, you had the verse backward from childhood, verse 17.
Because I would read it it was brought up whatever, and I saw it as God gave me brothers to get in trouble.
A brother is born for adversity. No, not born to cause you adversity, but born to help you through the. Yeah, Sandy as a child thought her brothers were born to cause her adversity. That's good. That's good. An understandable interpretation as a child. And we have had, all of us have had loved ones who may be friends who have maybe caused a fair measure of adversity. But no, in this case, we're saying the friend, the brother. This is one of those parallels, I think, that strengthens by the second stanza what the first stanza says. So a friend loves at all times. A brother is born for adversity. A brother loves at all times. A friend is born for adversity. Someone who will stick with you through the adversity caused by someone other than your brother. No, my brother is born to cause me adversity. That's great. This is why we don't yank scriptures out of context, right? I saw Todd and Liz both. Good. No, I saw Liz then. Okay.
I was looking at verse 13, you were saying that evil will never leave your house.
There you go.
I was just thinking, it seems like it's implying you gotta repay good for good.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking about how Jesus and even in Peter takes it even farther, repay evil with good.
Yes.
Jesus just turns that totally
Yes.
around.
So both Paul and Peter take this teaching. So Liz is talking about verse 13. If a man pays back evil for good, evil will never leave his house. And so both Paul and Peter, and really Jesus, with the love your enemies thing, and Peter pay back good for evil. This is the opposite of getting revenge. And this speaks into our justice conversation we began with earlier. Proverbs 17 both lifts up the importance of justice being done well, and also lifts up the importance of not reveling in someone else's suffering or punishment. It lifts up the importance of forgiveness, not keeping the matter going, but forgiving the matter. And here we have this issue of paying back evil for good. Evil will never leave his house. I think about Samson. He's an excellent example of this. I'm going to get even. I'm going to get it. Samson's like number one way of operating is, I'm going to get back, I'm going to get even. And his life was a tragic disaster. You know, he killed more people in his death than he ever did in his life, because he was this God-defying, not attentive to his boundaries, that sort of thing, and bent on revenge. Evil for good is not the way to live, because, right, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, so he paid us good for evil, to make us, while we were his enemies, to make us his friends. And so Jesus says, do good to those who hurt you, pray for those who mistreat you, bless those who curse you. And that is hard to do, but that is Proverbs 17:13.
But even in that, God still used Samson.
Oh, yeah. God manages to use a lot of broken characters, Samson included. But Samson, the Sunday school gloss of Samson, unfortunately, over the years has been, Samson, our strong hero. When the takeaway from Samson is tragic falling short of everything God had called him to be. And if this man would have just taken seriously the call to holiness, and that his power did not come from himself, but from the God who gave it to him, he could have been a redemptive figure and not like a barely pulled off something good figure. And so I think that's the word. The word from Samson is, yes, God used him as along with a lot of other broken people, particularly in that era, you know. But man, oh man, he blew the ball game. He could have been something really special. And right. I mean, yeah, the list goes on and on of people, broken people God has used, to be sure, and even defiant people that God has used. But I think, I think about the foxes and setting their tails on fire and all this other stuff. Samson is like obsessed with revenge and getting even. He is an example of evil never leaving his house. Samson decides that I'm going to be in it to vindicate Samson, and that really does not work very well for him, for sure. Well, we got 3 minutes. Anything else you want to unpack here? From anything we haven't touched on? What have we not gotten to yet here in Proverbs 17? This is good stuff.
Back to Samson.
Yes.
It kind of shows the results of a pampered child.
Okay, yeah. Samson's the result of a pampered child, at least of a I don't know if he's pampered or spoiled, or so much he has not cultivated, yes, entitled, and not cultivated a sense of humility. And you get the sense, now the manuscript of Judges is a little bit fuzzy at some points too, but you get the sense that mom and dad don't really engage Samson in a disciplined kind of way. You get the sense that they don't really give pushback to Samson. That's reading a lot into the text, and there's some question as to whether father and mother are there or not there at certain points. But you do get the idea that Samson is certainly an undisciplined man, whatever discipline was or was not given to him. Very, very, I see her, I want her, get her for me, right? That's his logic. I see, I want, I get. I mean, that's basically Samson's worldview, and it's not good. That's good. Other observations or questions at all from Proverbs 17? Anything we didn't get to from the board here? Leadership. Let's talk about that real quickly. There's a few. We've had some of this before about kings and nobles. We have talked about the issues of justice and judgment being meted out in fair ways, and really most of these references to leadership, directly or indirectly, in here have to do with doing justice or with not doing justice. I wanted to lift up just a couple of notes here. One is that when we have the word for official in here, it could be translated as noble or vice versa. So, for example, in verse 26, the word for official is the word for noble, I believe, and there's a couple other places maybe as well. But noble sometimes means you're just a noble person, like character, and sometimes means noble in terms of standing as far as an official. 20, I'm sorry, what did you say? Verse 7? Yes. Arrogant lips are unsuited to a fool. How much worse lying lips to a ruler. What kind of ruler are you going to be? We don't want to have rulers that tell lies. We want to have rulers that speak what is true. So what is conduct that's becoming of a leader in Proverbs 17? Someone who administers true justice and someone who tells the truth and someone who rejects bribery, and someone who doesn't revel in someone else's problems, I think all those things kind of come together here. Yes? Yeah, the word, you might have it translated either way. It may be a very small deal that's not worth even saying something. But where did I even find that? Now that I did that.
Some of it, I think, says prince as well.
Yes, yes. I don't even know where I went. Verse 11 has official, yes. So,
We're in 7, I think.
yeah, let's just skip that comment for now about noble and official. The translation can happen either way, but that may have been not worth bringing up. No, well, at one point, of course, I can't find it now, but there's one point where it's unclear whether we're flogging someone because they're an official or flogging someone because they're a noble, like of noble character. That may have been verse 26. But then just now as I click on it, and this could be weird, my program not working correctly, it's not showing up. So just ignore that comment. Every now and again, Nathan says something that just really doesn't have anything to do with anything, so just kind of file that away as whatever. He thought he found something fun and has nothing of importance to us. So, yes. My dad did point out, I think, I made a reference a couple weeks ago to Proverbs 14:22. It should have been 14:27, whatever we were talking about. So that was just a right-o, you know. We talk about manuscripts in the Bible getting passed down and how there end up being these little problems and things. Well, it's because people write like I do and they misspelled a word. And what does this mean? Yeah, so anyway, the Holy Spirit gets us through that. Good conversation today, Proverbs 17. We will do Proverbs 18 next Wednesday. September next week. Isn't that crazy? So we'll be Proverbs 18. So I encourage you again, go through and read Proverbs 18. I encourage you, mark it up. Figure out a way to mark it. Maybe you mark the word fool the same way every time. Maybe you circle every and, underline every but, or whatever you do. Do something to help your brain focus. Because I said, for me, with the Proverbs being as kind of rapid fire and all over the place they are, it's real easy for me to get distracted and off course. So something you can do to help highlight or underline or mark in some way to help your attention. And then keep in mind as you're reading Proverbs 18, what stands out to you, what is convicting, what is encouraging, what rings true with something we talked about before. And we'll just go through Proverbs 18 the same way that we did Proverbs 17 today. And I think we have how many verses? 24 verses. They keep getting shorter in Proverbs 18. So anyway, that's the plan for next week. Let's pray, and then we'll dismiss. Lord, we thank you for this good discussion today. I thank you for the things that came up. I pray that for each of our hearts you would cause to stick whatever most needs to stick. I pray you'd help us to be a people of justice and mercy and to live in that paradox in a way that is honoring to you. I pray you would cause us to be refined by the crucibles that we find ourselves in. I pray for compassion and mercy on people that are hurting. I pray for your heart for the people in our lives. I pray for the ability not to repay evil with evil, but to repay evil with good. And we thank you, Lord, for this conversation of what you're doing in us. I pray your blessing on the rest of this day, that each of us would be your faithful witnesses wherever you have placed us. And we ask you to bring us back safely again next Wednesday for a good conversation, that we might continually be shaped by your Spirit to look more like Jesus, our King, in whose name we pray. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye to the online folks. We will see you next Wednesday.